And Shabbat Shalom, everybody, and welcome to the Virtual House Church. I'm your host, Rob Skiba. I'm excited today. This is a nostalgic Torah portion for me. This is the first Torah portion I ever did 10 years ago. And to join me today, I have Jake Grant with us, and Juan Carlos, and Kevin Roberts also is joining us today. I'll bring them on in just a second. If you guys are new here to the Virtual House Church, you can go to our website. Whoops, let me switch something here, and I'll get you over there. Go to our website, virtualhousechurch.com. Virtualhousechurch.com is our primary website. It is a work in progress. We are in the process of updating it with a newer design, and most of these links now will take you to the new website, so I'll just go ahead and click on that, and it takes you over to the new website. Who we are is just about Sheila and I. Virtual House Church Store. Let me enlarge this for you so you guys can see a little better. Virtual House Church Store has our calendars on it, the calendar that Kevin and Amanda Roberts put together right there. You can click on that for a free PDF to view and or download. If you live in the United States, you click on the domestic button, or if you're out of the United States, the international button to order printed copies. And below that, we have the calendar that Juan Carlos put together, a little bit different. Same thing, click on that. Free PDF you can view and or download. If you would like to get the workbooks for our studies here, you can get them probably faster through Amazon. You can click on each one here. It takes you to the Amazon page for each book. Or if you want to save a little bit of money, you can get all 5 together. And we are actually caught up on all of our orders. So if you have ordered anything in the past, it's in the mail. So just be patient. It's on the way. And so you can save a little bit of money getting all 5 together there. If you'd like to get the PDFs, you can download them instantly and print off copies for yourself or for your small group or house church or whatever fellowship you might have. And below that is the Ephraim Awakening DVD-ROM with all the resources on there that you see right here. And our statement of faith is just about, well, what we believe. And below that is the Coming Out of Babylon page. And that's the page for new people primarily, who want to understand what's this all about? What are we doing here? Well, this is the page for you. And on this page, actually, is I started my Revolutionary Radio project almost immediately after doing this week's Torah portion 10 years ago. I did that Torah portion, and wow, I mean, it just really just set us on fire for God. I mean, we were starving in milk bars before that. Every church we went to was just like a milkshake bar, it seemed like. And we finally got a full steak dinner, right, for that this week's Torah portion 10 years ago. And right after that, I'm like, you know what, I got to start a radio show, and more people got to hear about this. And so I had Kevin on right here in our Back to Basics interview part 1. This was on November 30th, 2010. And it was just talking about, what we were doing here, getting started. Then after that, we had our small group leader, Pastor Michael Thigpen, came on the following show we did, Back to Basics 2, so you can listen to the audio for both of those there. And, of course, below that are books and videos and a lot of resources here for you guys to check out. And also really want to highly recommend these books to you right here by Todd D. Bennett, The Walking in the Light series. And actually one of my listeners just sent me one of his books that I didn't have. I think it was number 12 in his collection. Really thick book. So if you're listening out there, I got your package yesterday. Thank you so much. Appreciate that. Added that to my collection. So might want to check out those books right there. If you are looking for actual fellowship with people besides doing it here virtually online, if you go to the Torah Fellowship page, it takes a few seconds to load, but once it does, you'll see this fellowship finder that 119 Ministries put together, and these are people all over the world that are doing what we're doing here, and that are you can click on one of these tabs right here, and let's see, Laura. You could click on that, get her contact information right there, and reach out and maybe interact with people in person. So that's a great resource for you to check out. If you're wondering, what about Paul? What do we do with Paul? A lot of questions come up with regard to the writings of Paul. Click on that. Quite a number of the commonly asked questions, frequently asked questions are addressed right here. Also, the book of Galatians. Got to deal with the book of Galatians, right? So what's up with the Galatians? Are we really foolish Galatians for trying to obey Yahuwah? Well, this blog page right here addresses that. And then, of course, there's another page here specifically for the Hebrew calendars, and you'll notice some new things pop up here on the right side. If you're looking for a specific topic, you can click on the search menu right there. And if you want to listen to something really encouraging, listen to Yahuwah's love letter to you. Also, if you're stressing out about the events of the world today, this one's a good one for you right here, Psalm 91, read by John William Galt, my friend, who is the voice of the movies, does the preview. He's the preview movie guy. And below that are some tools that I like to use a lot online. BlueLetterBible.org, BibleGateway.com, Bible.cc, Bible.is, all right there. As well as you should check out this resource, the Aramaic English New Testament Bible by Andrew Gabriel Roth. You'll really enjoy that. For those of you who want to continue supporting what we're doing here so we can continue to do what we do here, you can do so right here. And for those of you who have already supported us in the past, thank you so much. We can't do it without you. I mean that sincerely. We greatly appreciate your support. And finally, down at the bottom here, other Torah ministries that I really enjoy, Torah Family by Steve Mutria. New to Torah, Zach Bauer, 119 Ministries. Unlearn is Lex Meyer and Jim Staley teachings right there. So highly recommend you check out those. And let's go ahead and get into this week's study. Click on that, and that takes you to this page. I just added the player for the scriptures. This wasn't on here before, so from now on it will be on this page also. So you just click on that.
Jacob lived in the land,
and somebody will read this week's Torah portion and prophets and New Testament portions to you. Below that is the Parsha in 60 seconds. Parsha is the Hebrew word for study. We'll click on that in a minute. And then below that is what we're doing right here, right now. This is the video we're doing right now, which will archive here and be here for an entire week. It'll be here till next Friday. Fridays are typically when I update this page. And then right below that is the notes for this week's study. If you click on that, it takes you here. If you're working on a mobile device, you can, if you're viewing this on a mobile device, you can click on this and it takes you to a different version of this website that's scalable and it sizes appropriately to whatever you're viewing it on. And let's go ahead and play now the Parsha in 60 seconds.
Shalom and welcome to Parsha in 60 seconds. Today's portion is from Genesis 37:1-40-23. It is called Yeshev, which means "and he settled." This is the story of Jacob's family. Joseph was the favorite son and tattled on his brothers. To make it worse, he wore a custom-made rainbow coat and had dreams that his brothers metaphorically bowed down to him. The brothers were fed up, so they ripped off his rainbow coat, Sparta-kicked him down a well, and sold him into slavery and lied to Jacob that Joseph was eaten by beasts. Jacob was sad. Later, Judah moved out and married a daughter of a Canaanite and had 3 sons. The oldest married Tamar, but God killed him because he was wicked. The second brother was required by law to give a child to Tamar, but he failed and died. The last brother was up to bat, but Judah was afraid and would not allow Tamar her right. Long story short, Judah accidentally slept with Tamar and fulfilled her right. She gave birth to Perez. Meanwhile, Joseph landed a sweet gig with a man named Potiphar, but his wife tried to have her way with Joseph, and when he refused, she accused him of rape, and he was sent to prison. While in prison, Joseph met a baker and a butler and interpreted their dreams. The baker would die, but the butler would live and be restored to his position with Pharaoh. Joseph asked the butler for a referral when he was restored, but the butler forgot. And that is Yeshev in 60 seconds.
Sparta kicked him. That's awesome. I really enjoy that ministry right there. Below that are some of the other teachings we did from 2012 and 2013, 2016. Changed the format a little bit there in 2016, and we started doing it with Now You See TV and took questions from the audience, so that was a lot of fun. And we didn't do it on this particular week because I had updated my computer system and didn't have everything hooked up right, and that's why the audio is a little weird. It was taking the audio from my webcam instead of my headset mic. But in the 2016 broadcast, we continued after the Torah. So at the end of the Torah portion commentary, we continued in Joshua, and then we're in Judges now at this point. So that's some really cool stuff there. And then 2017, Zach and Darren from My House Ministries were joined. I forgot this guy's name right here, but they were joined by another individual, and boy, that was a really enjoyable commentary. So if you guys haven't seen that, I highly recommend you check it out. And then once again, here's this week's study, and this is by the Way Biblical Fellowship. This is JP and Charlie's commentary for this week's study, and below that are the commentaries by Ardell. Highly recommend you download and keep these, read these commentaries. They're excellent each week. And the questions, as usual. The Joshua portion, boy, goes into a lot of detail. So if you want to see what Joshua had to say to elaborate on this week's Torah portion, you can click on each of the chapters right here and read it in Joshua. Notes from this week's study, oh boy, and we'll talk about that as we continue today. But the parallels between Joseph and Yeshua was what really got me excited. These were just a few that I had taken from my notes from when I actually attended my first house church for this week's Torah portion. And then below that, I have a link. You click on this picture here. It's a link to a blog that I wrote. I want to say probably right after that, Operation Leverage. Sheila calls it Operation Leverage. What Tamar did to Judah here. And so you could click on that, and it takes you to my blog, and it's a pretty lengthy blog, but when you get all the way down towards the bottom, I believe, it deals with the Tamar issue here. So you might want to check that out, and let's see, other resources, that's about it. So, all right, let's go ahead and jump in, and I'll welcome my other guests to join me here. Hey, guys, Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Hello, Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Yeah, right on. Boy, got a full house today. I'm excited. So I've already done plenty of talking here, so I'm going to shut up now and let you guys do some talking. And again, like I said earlier, this is an exciting Torah portion week for me. This is the first one that I had ever done, and it was Black Friday. I was sitting in a parking lot of Fry's Electronics, just feeling really heavy, feeling really down, and just like, man, I don't know what the deal is, and I felt like I needed to pray with somebody. So I got on my phone and looked on my contacts list, and as I was scrolling through the people that I know, I saw Kevin Roberts' number there, and I thought, you know what? Yeah, he's the guy I need to call. So I called you, Kevin, and you prayed with me and brought some peace back into my life that day. And then you said, hey, listen, Amanda and I are going to a Torah study tomorrow at the Christian bookstore. Like, that didn't compute in my head. I'm like, Torah study at the Christian bookstore? What are you talking about? But, you know, like I said earlier, Sheila and I were kind of in a drought. And actually, I don't want to diss anybody, but you were going to one of the same churches that Sheila and I were going to, and Amanda, you and Amanda had left, and Sheila and I left shortly afterwards, and we were just like, man, we're looking for something. And then you found something, and you told me about it, and this was the first Torah portion that I came into it at that point. And had you started from the beginning, or did you also start partway into Genesis, Kevin?
You know, it was the most amazing thing. It's a kind of a long testimony, but the short end of it is Amanda and I were struggling to try to figure out how do we transition into a biblically relevant lifestyle. And I said, I heard about these things that the Jewish people do called Torah portions. Would you like for me to check that out? And Amanda was like, well, sure. Go for it if that floats your boat, you know, because we didn't know what we were doing. Didn't know anybody who did. And so we went to a football game on a Friday night because a friend of ours had a daughter on the homecoming court. And we met this very interesting guy who was a Lutheran healer, and he was in trouble with the Jewish community up in Connecticut. His name is Paul Teskey, because he was praying over Jewish people and healing them in the name of Jesus, and they were getting healed, and the rabbis were going crazy. So they were telling his church, shut him up. But anyway, so Paul Teskey was there to do this book signing at Mardell, and a friend of the father of the girl that we went to see on the homecoming court told us about this Bible study. And unbeknownst to us, and really it was for a book signing with Paul Teskey, was, you know, to go meet him, and he was in town, and hear about how he's, you know, exercising these gifts of healings. So we go there early, and he just mentioned his Bible study thing, and we sat down at the table, and we were escorted to the back there. And when we sat at the table, lo and behold, it was the Torah portions, little slices of bread on the picture. And Michael Thigpen had escorted us back, and he was telling us about it. And we started on Bereshit. It was the very first one. I looked at Amanda, and I was like, if this isn't a move of the Lord, I have no idea what is. And that's how we got started with the Torah aspect of this. So it was pretty exciting.
Wow, I didn't even know all that. I didn't know the backstory on that. So you did start right in the Torah portion number 1, but as a result of going to a football game.
Yeah.
That's awesome, man.
It's crazy. It's a high school football game at Lutheran Church or Lutheran private school in Dallas. So,
wow.
Prince of Peace Academy, I think is the name of it.
Oh, Prince, is that Wayne Hammett? Does Wayne Hammett run that deal?
I don't know. It used to be a car dealership, and now it's a huge school.
Oh, wow. Well, since we're doing origin stories here, I haven't heard Jake or Juan Carlos's origin story as how you guys first came into this. So, Jake, why don't we start with you? How did you first come into studying Torah?
Of course, I grew up as a missionary kid. So, as young adult and stuff in high school, I was around a lot of different blends and flavors of Christianity. I went to the largest missionary kids school in the world, so I had a lot of different kind of Christian upbringing that I was bringing to the table. But it wasn't until college that I really kind of turned my life around and became my faith and not my parents' faith. And it was really at that point that I started to question, starting with the holidays, and have part of my testimony that even had me thinking about eating clean and unclean. I didn't know about all those Torah commandments and stuff like that, but eventually it started back in 2014 with me with just holidays, and eventually studying out what the biblical alternative to that, which was the Leviticus 23 feasts. That kind of got me into keeping Passover for my first time in 2015 was my first Passover, and then I started keeping the feast cycles after that. But so 2014 for me is when I first started looking into stuff and really kind of stepping into a faith of my own.
That's awesome. Juan Carlos, how did you first get into all of this? And actually, Jake, what was your first Torah portion? Was it the Passover portion, or what was do you remember where you were in the Torah when you first got started?
Oh yeah, I came in the fall feast time frame, so it was like
towards the end, Deuteronomy.
I think I had done Passover, and then it was later on that year that I kind of started getting into the Torah portion cycles. It took me a while before I actually discovered what Torah portions were. It was kind of like on the back end of it. I had actually already learned about Sabbath and feasts, and then like I ran into some people that were like, "Yeah, we're studying the Torah portions," and I'm like, "Well, what's that?" But it didn't take long for it to click for me, because it really did make sense that Yeshua was going to the synagogue, and wouldn't it make sense for us as believers today to figure out in what way did the early disciples and also the Messiah kind of study the Word on a weekly basis, and the Torah portions, in terms of what I've studied, is really one of the most historical Bible studies that we can jump onto in today's world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very cool. Juan Carlos, so how did you first come into this walk, and what was your first Torah portion that you ever looked into?
Well, I think I shared part of my testimony here in Virtual House in the past, so part of it is going to be a repetitive one, but I'm a pastor kid. So I passed my entire life in church since I have memory until the age of 33 approximately. And I think, we somehow Yahuwah took us out from church at that point. And I spent several years. Actually, it was before that I came out of church. It was around the 28 years somehow. So I spent around 8 years to 10 years out of church. But my faith was within me. So sometimes when I look in the past, it's like the parable of the prodigal son, because during the period of time, no matter my faith was in Yahuwah, I didn't know the name back then. I started to live life in different ways, but something happened suddenly that the hunger started within me, and Yahuwah, he does things in the way he knows is better, and it started by the end of 2011 that I lost my job. I was an entire year, almost a sabbatical year, without a job. Looking for something, trying to start a company in order to get some income. I didn't have any income that year, but Yahuwah sustained me. And during this year, the hunger started to increase. I started to study the Word. I started to have dreams. I started to have doing a lot of fasting, prayers, and by the end of 2012 approximately. I started to open my eyes. I started to get in contact with the information, the paganism in Christianity, about Christmas and about all this pagan world we have around, and started to see the truth of the word. And from by the end of 2012, everything started for me. Knowing Torah, starting to know Torah, starting to learn the path. And here I am, when I started with Torah portion, to be honest, I don't remember exactly, but I do believe that it was around fall time as well. So I started to pick up the notes. I started to look in different sites. I started to build my own kind of books in order to start studying each one of the portions and to take notes. So that was the testimony. It has been a so amazing walk, not an easy one, as we discussed last week, because it's like a roller coaster. Sometimes you are up, and most of the times you are down, but you are down because to be tested in order to increase and to grow and mature. So that's the testimony in a nutshell, in 60 seconds.
Awesome, thank you. Yeah, it's funny. This morning, taking a shower, I was just praying. I was praising Yahuwah for the difficult times. I was like, I don't ever want to repeat them, but I'm very thankful for them and for everything that led to like this point right here, right where we are right now. And boy, this is an exciting Torah portion for me. It'd be easy for me to hog the whole thing, so I won't. Kevin, you eagerly texted me, and since you haven't been with us for a while and we're all excited to hear from you, we'll let you go first this time. So go ahead and bring it, brother.
I'm happy to do that. I won't, and I promise I won't hog it up. I did put it together in a presentation so that you could see the flow of it. And so I'll go fast, and we'll go here. So can you see my presentation at this point?
Stand by. Go ahead and share it.
All right. I said sharing. Is it not sharing?
No.
Oh, come on, Kev. Again,
did you share on Skype?
Yes, I'm trying.
I wonder if it's something I need to do on my end.
I have two Skype windows open, so that might be my problem.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry, guys.
Oh, no worries.
Okay. Here we go. All right. It says I'm sharing.
Nope.
It's saying stop sharing. All right. Guys, I'm so sorry here. Let me. All right, let me stop sharing and restart sharing. How about that? Okay. Share screen. I'll just share my desktop.
I could see your screen in Skype.
You can see it now? Okay.
Well, now, but I could see it. Now I can see your screen.
Okay.
Oh, that's weird. I can't, but okay.
Oh,
okay. All right. I'm so sorry. For some reason I had two Skype windows open. All right. So let me just get a little background, because I want to show you some interesting things with these names and the meanings. And if you can see on the screen here, I have Genesis 6:9 quoted, and it refers to the genealogy of Noah, right? And Noah was a just man, perfect in his generations, and Noah walked with Elohim. Okay, so you're saying, what does that have to do with this Torah portion? I'll show you. And then in Job chapter 2, verse 3, when Yahweh said to Satan, have you considered my servant Job, that there is none like him on the earth, a blameless and upright man, one who fears Elohim and shuns evil, and still he holds fast to his integrity, although you incited me against him to destroy him without cause. And so you see that in this case, both Noah was called perfect and Job was called blameless. And so when you look at the underlying Hebrew word, it's actually the same word concerning Noah, Noah ish sadik tamim. And the word tamim here is plural for blameless, so it's blamelesses. Im makes it a masculine plural. And concerning Job, in Job 2:3, it says he's ish tam veyashar. And so that, again, he's a man that is blameless and upright. And so what we see is when it's talking about Jacob, though, the translators did something really weird. And Genesis 25:27, it says that the boys grew, and Esau was a skillful hunter, a man of the field, but Jacob was a mild man, dwelling in the tents. And what's really interesting is this Hebrew word for mild is the same exact word. It's tam. So which was translated as perfect just a few minutes ago. So it's interesting in our English translations, for whatever reason, Noah was perfect. Job was blameless, but Jacob's mild. To me, it's a bias in the translation that it shows up that way. But what does it mean to be tam or perfect or blameless or mild, if you want to use that? And so I've got this Hebrew alphabet that you can see here, Tav and the Mem. And the Tav, you can see these are the basic meanings associated with this. And we've talked about Hebrew word pictures before. But so this is what they are. So if you look at it, the way I'm seeing it is one who is in covenant, that's the Tav, with the Messiah. And so what we see is a Hebrew word picture. Noah was in covenant with the Messiah. He was a preacher of righteousness. Job was in covenant with the Messiah. He had it all. He lost it all, but he never gave up his faith, even though but when he started complaining, the Lord revealed to him a lot of amazing things through his line of questioning. And there's a lot of prophetic significance to the questions that the Lord asked Job, and there's a lot of insight, but it's clear that Job was very highly favored by the Lord. And also we see that at the time when Jacob was a young man dwelling in the tents, he was 15 years old when you run the numbers and you do the analysis, and his twin brother Esau was also 15 years old, and that's when he got the birthright, because Esau was out hunting and playing around outside instead of making this red lentil stew, which I believe was a mourner's stew, because if you look at the timeline, that's when Abraham died. And so it's the firstborn's responsibility to serve the family, but yet here you have the secondborn doing the job to bring the food potentially to his father, Isaac, who was lamenting the death of his father, Abraham. And so we see that was always Jacob's calling, but he was perfect at that point, but he wasn't called Yashar. And so that's where Job, if you look at Job 2:3 again, and Yahweh said to Satan, have you considered my servant Job, that there is no one like him on the earth, again, blameless and upright man. So this word upright is the word Yeshar in Hebrew. And you could see it's translated, straight or right or righteous. But if you see right here in the middle of this, it's like 51 times in the NASB is translated as upright. So that's the predominant, it's either right or upright. And so that's the nature of this word Yeshar. It's the overwhelming preponderance in Scripture. And so looking at this word in the Hebrew alphabet, what is upright? Yeshar, again, it's one who has been touched by the yod, or the hand, of the sar, which sar is the Hebrew word for prince. And so it's yod, shin, resh. And so what we see in the text is after Jacob he was perfect or blameless, he was tam, but he then went all the way out to spent 20 years with Laban to get cleaned up, because he had some issues. I mean, we have issues, right? And we have to work through those. And sometimes the Lord will send us away, and then we get cleaned up, and then on our way home, we encounter some struggles and some stress, and when we prevail, we get a new name, or this is what Jacob happened. So he says, your name shall no longer be called Jacob, but Israel, because you have struggled with Elohim and with men and have prevailed. And so, and again, this Shimcha Ki Im Yisrael is what we see here. And so it boils down to, who is Israel, right? And this word Israel is actually two words. It's Yeshar El, which is one who is upright, or Yeshar, before Elohim. Well, it gets really interesting, because what we see happening is when Jacob finally reached his end. Now, his name means heel grabber. Yaakov is the hand on the heel. And Jacob grabbed on to this man who he referred to as Elohim, and he wouldn't let go until the sunrise. And that's when he had this, wrestling match. And then it says that the man tikukaf, which is literally the word slap, right? It's like in Psalm 47, it says, praise the Lord, clap your hands, all you nations. It's like clapping, right? So he spanked him, right? He clapped him so hard, he smacked him on his hip that it messed him up. But what makes us upright before El is the one who has been touched, or in Jacob's case, slapped, right, by the yod of the prince of El, the Sar El. The Sar is like the Prince of Peace, right? And so what we see happening here is Jacob gets his new identity and his new name. He was already in covenant with the Messiah, but he hadn't yet been touched by the Lord. And by the way, what is the relationship of a prince to the king? It's the son of the king, right? So you could also say that it's one who's been touched by the hand of the son of El, because the son is the Sar, the prince of a king. And let me tell you, when you're touched by the Lord like that, you are not the same, and it will permanently affect your walk. And so what I want to encourage everyone today here is, as we're listening to all this stuff, and I'm going to just try to stop sharing here, okay, is that, when you have a real encounter with the Lord, he will touch you and your walk will never be the same again. Now, it may be humbling because it's a lot more glorious to walk with confidence and be strong, but it could very well be that this humbling is what might have broken the heart of Esau, because when he saw, when Jacob knew that Esau was coming, the scripture says that he came with 400 warriors or 400 men, and Jacob was panic stricken. Okay, but here he is limping along, and 400. It says that Jacob was very, very full of fear, and I believe again the significance of the 400 is the fact that that's the letter Tav, and so what you see is Jacob's, which the Tav means the end, right? He goes, oh my gosh, this is my end. This is it. My life is over. Esau's men are going to attack me, and it's not just the 400 men; it's Esau as well. So that's 401. So it's like he has an encounter with the real Messiah, but now he's got this fake Messiah, this 401, the Aleph and Tav, when you add them together, is 401. And so you see that he's overcome with fear. And so he's like, I'm going to give all these gifts. I'm going to go out there to the front. I'm going to divide up my family. They're going to come behind me, and we're going to send all these gifts. And I think what we see happening here is Jacob was providing all these gifts because effectively he's giving the blessing to Esau that he stole, right? If you think about it like that, because he got the blessing of Abraham on his way out, and then he got all this testing, all these 20 years, but on his way back in, it's like the Lord restored what should have been given to Esau in the first place. And that was fine, and Jacob was happy to get rid of it, because the truth of the matter, Jacob wanted Esau to go on his way in peace so that Jacob could then, or Israel could then, move into the land and fulfill his destiny as the one who would bring forth the line of the Messiah and the soon coming king. And so where I would suggest is this. It's interesting that Jacob was getting cleaned up for 20 years. And here we are, it's been 2,000 years, which is 100 times that, right? And on our way back home, on our way to the kingdom to fulfill our destiny, we might run into some troubles with Esau. He might shake us down and take all the blessings that the Lord gave us. But the truth of the matter is the Lord says, hey, if I gave it to you the first time from Uncle Laban, what do you think I can do when I bring you home? And so to me, this Torah portion has a prophetic significance in the restoration of the kingdom of Israel in the land of Israel. And we just have to be willing to make the journey, and we will walk humbly with our Lord and prevail. And that goes against our flesh, but our flesh has to get spanked. Tikkun kaf, right? We get a little slapping by the Lord, and we get humbled a little bit, and then we're ready to really serve him. And so that's my word of encouragement, is be ready to serve the Lord. And you know what? If somebody comes and steals all your stuff, just know who gave it to you and know who keeps score, and the Lord will make it right. So I'll stop it there, because I know that everybody else has probably lots of insights, but I just wanted to offer that as a word of encouragement from this week's Torah portion.
All right, awesome, man. Thanks, Kevin. And
by the way, one other thing, you see behind me, my tree is the sheen. You see
Yeah.
that? So my buddy Joseph Riverwind pointed that out when he came over here once before, and I was like, yeah, I guess hopefully the Lord is looking down on us here.
That's awesome, man. Looks like we lost Jake. He dropped off here, so I'll see if I can get him back on. And in the meantime, Juan Carlos, yeah, man, what does this week's Torah portion say to you?
Yeah, actually, you know, the Torah portion, I was reading about the story of Joseph, and I think Kevin was sharing something about Jacob that is totally aligned to what I wanted to share in the case of Joseph. You know, last week with Rob, we were discussing about this, about to be overcomers. That is exactly what we saw in case of Jacob. During these 20 years that he needed to be cleansed in order to serve Yahweh. He couldn't do it before getting cleansed and leaving behind all this offense that he had most probably internally within him. And you know, continuing with the story of Joseph, we see something very similar, because you know, I was reading between the chapter 37 to chapter 40, and we see that Joseph went through a similar situation, and maybe in this case he didn't need any cleansing somehow, like in case of Jacob. But, you know, after the whole situation that happened with his brothers, you know, being sold out at the age of 17 years, you know, can you imagine that you are 17 years old? You are taken by your 11 brothers, or 10 brothers in that case, because Benjamin wasn't part of it, was just too small. And just to that your brothers are taking you and just throwing you to the pit. Yes, I can imagine how difficult was for Joseph all that situation, and going ahead on the portion that I was reading this morning about Joseph, everything that he needed to pass through was very difficult. Actually, just taking a look at what is written in the book of Yeshev and the book of Jubilees, we see that Joseph was sold at least to three times. Mm-hmm. You know, it is written in the book of Yeshev that he was sold to the Ishmaelites. Then the was sold to the Midianites. Then was sold to the Ishmaelites. And the Ishmaelites sold him to four, I don't remember what was the origin of the guys, but four guys that were coming out from Egypt. And those guys sold Joseph again to Potiphar. So the entire life of Joseph was falling down. And you know, just to do a parallel of what's happening today to us, it's something similar to what's happening to us today. You know, the way we used to live is falling down. Everything that was supposed to be normal now is not normal. We were supposed to live in a new normal, everybody's saying. You know, the new normal that we need to look here with all our strength is the new normal of Yahuwah and his kingdom and his righteousness. But just to do the parallel, you know, we see that everything is falling down. Can you imagine the situation that Joseph went through, being a free guy, being the beloved of his father, and going through this entire process of humiliation, you know, losing his freedom, losing his family, being sold so many times, and going through a foreign land to people that maybe he didn't understand his language. Actually, there's a passage in the scripture that is mentioning that Joseph didn't understand the language at that point. So it was so difficult that I can imagine, and this is coming in the next portions, that all these difficulties within Joseph are most probably very similar to what you were saying, Kevin, about Jacob. You know, what Jacob went through with the situation with Esau, about the situation that he was persecuted by all these people, the persecution that he had with his father-in-law. It was so difficult, and we see a very similar pattern in the life of Joseph, going through all these difficulties. But there is a common denominator here, and this is so important that we see even through these difficulties in the life of Jacob and also in the life of Joseph, that Yahuwah was with them. It is written in this portion, and let me see if I can look the specific one. I think it's in Genesis, Bereshit, chapter 39, that it says, for example, in the chapter 39, verse 5, and it came to be from the time that he appointed him over. He's talking about this portion is talking about Potiphar and Joseph. Potiphar appointed Joseph over his house. And it says, and all that he had, that Yahuwah blessed the Misraim's house for Joseph's sake. And the blessing of Yahuwah was on all that he had in the house and in the field. And there is multiple examples also in this portion that we see Yahuwah being beside Joseph, going with Joseph and supporting him during this entire process of difficulties, being in a foreign land. We see Yahuwah with his mighty hand over Joseph, blessing him in everything he did. And we know what the story going on, and we will see in the next portions in the coming weeks how Joseph, all the dreams he had at the beginning, the dreams that he received from Yahuwah, came true because Yahuwah was with him. So you know, just to recap on what I have been saying, we see that even in the moment of difficulties, Yahuwah is with us if we look for him with all our hearts, as is written in his word. If we seek Yahuwah with hunger, with thirst, with all our heart, he will be with us, no matter the difficulties we are going through, the same way that was with Abraham, the same way that was with Jacob, and the same way we see in the case of Joseph. And you know, just one point, because I see Jake also join us, and I would like to hear his comments as well. You know, to the point you mentioned at the beginning, Rob, about the parallelism between Joseph and Yahushua HaMashiach. There are a few passages that I want to share, and that for me, you know, I have the notes here in my scripture that are very, very interesting about this parallelism between Joseph and Yahushua. And this is in the chapter 37, verse, just to start over, this is in the verse 13 and 14. I'm just having my scripture here, so if you can put it in the screen, Rob, please. Mm-hmm. So it said that the Israel, in the verse 13, Israel, in this case, Jacob, said to Joseph, are not your brothers feeding the flock in Shechem? Come, I send you to them. So he said to him, here I am. And he said to him, please go and see if it is well with your brothers and well with the sheep, and bring back word to me. So he sent him out of the valley of Hebron, and he went to Shechem. So here I see the first parallel is Israel, Jacob, sending his son, the father sending his son in order to go and seek for his brothers. And we see Yahushua HaMashiach telling us that he was his father, our father, he said in many moments, that he sent him to this world in order to look for his brother and work to look for his people. So this amazing parallel, I found it so amazing. And if we continue in this same chapter, and we go to the verse 16, because we see in the 15 that Joseph went through to the land of Shechem, but he didn't find his brother. So thinking that he thought that maybe he was missing, or maybe his brother were lost. So he found a certain man and this man told him that his brother were in a different place. And this is written in the verse 16. It says, and he said, I am seeking my brothers. Please inform me where they are feeding their sheep. So when I saw this, I immediately thought in what Yahushua said, I came to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. So in this case, Joseph as well, looking for his brother. The brothers were not in the place they're supposed to be. They were lost. And he went to the land of Dothan in order to seek for his brother. So this parallelism as well, it was so amazing to me when I saw it, because it's exactly what Yahushua did and is doing for us. And one thing that also, this is in parallel to what Yahushua mentioned in one of his parable, and this is in the verse 18. It says, and they saw him from a distance, talking about his brothers, and they saw him from a distance, and before he came near, they plotted against him to kill him. And actually, if we go just to do a parallel to this one, to the verse 8 in the chapter 37, it says, and his brother said to him, shall you indeed reign over us? Shall you indeed rule over us? So they hated him even more for his dream and for his words. We see here the relationship between his brothers and Joseph, but the wording here in the verse 8, the brothers, this was in response of one of the dreams of Joseph. The brothers saying that you are going to reign over us, you are going to be our king. And we see that's the interesting parallel. We see exactly the same wording in the book of Luke, chapter 19, verse 14, in one of the parables of Yahushua. And actually, if we read the chapter 20 of Luke, the book of Luke, also there is an amazing parallelism to the story between Joseph and his brothers. So in the chapter 19 of Luke, verse 14, and this is Yahushua talking about the parable of the talents. And it says here in the 14, but his subjects were hating him and sent a delegation after him to say, we do not wish this one to reign over us. So just in this wording, and we receive and we see the entire parable, we see an amazing parallel to what was happening with Joseph and his brothers in this parable of Yahushua HaMashiach. So this story is so amazing. It's so beautiful how it ended up. We see the strong hand of Yahuwah in the life of Joseph. And just to close my comment here, I think this is what we need to look and seek with our entire being, to be like Joseph, to seek Yahuwah with all that strength, to even in the middle of the difficulties, to trust in him with all our heart. And when we do that, we're going to be able to find him, because everybody that is seeking him and seeking him with all the heart and with all the strength, we are able to find him. So that's just to start, Rolf. I don't know, guys, if you want to comment on here.
Yeah, real good. I'll reserve my comments till afterwards. I did take a couple of notes here while you were talking, and since Jake is back, I'll go ahead and let Jake give us his commentary.
Hey guys. All right, am I coming through here all right? I dropped off there for a second. My computer decided to crash.
Bad internet connection there in Egypt.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I had to run the line up the pyramid. So this Torah portion is great, guys. This is really a Torah portion that breaks down dreams and biblical dreams, and that can be a really interesting topic for a lot of reasons. So I want to start there, if I can, is just this whole premise of what is a dream from the Most High is a concept that I think a lot of people could maybe learn from and refocus maybe how they use dreams in their own life. But it definitely seems to be the case that whenever a dream is from the Most High, at least in these scriptural examples, they come in pairs of two. So starting off in this Torah portion, Joseph, of course, has two dreams. In verse 5, he says he dreamed a dream and the sheaves, and then he says he dreamed another dream in verse 9. And then, of course, we have the dualism, the double dreams later on that Pharaoh has, and then, of course, we have the two dreams with the cupbearer and the bread maker. So all of those are really interesting, just how dreams seem to come. I know there was a lot of people interesting around Sukkot this year that were having dreams in pairs of two, and they'd have the same dream, and then they'd go to sleep and they'd wake up again, and could that mean these dreams are that's what makes a dream eligible for being from the Father? Is it coming in a pair? Is there any other examples of that? I don't know, but I think this is just really a dream Torah portion, which is really interesting. So something I wanted to point out when we were reading through here that I kind of want your guys' help deciphering, if you guys have maybe gone through this Torah portion or are more familiar, but who is Joseph being sold to whenever he's thrown into the pit? You have Midianites mentioned, and you have the Arabians, and you have like these different players coming into play. Was it two different groups that showed up and eventually had Joseph sold, or was it one group that's being referred to in two different ways? Maybe you guys can help clarify that for me.
Yeah, that's actually, I don't remember the exact order, but that's actually given in quite a bit of detail in the Joshua portion, like how it transpired and went back and forth. And you may not have been on when Juan Carlos was talking, but he actually mentioned that does it say that in Jubilees also, Juan?
Yes, I think it's mentioned in Jubilees. I was taking a look here. Let me see.
I was wondering.
I think. Go ahead.
While you're looking, I was wondering what the because we see so many parallels between Joseph and Yeshua, and I was just trying to think, with regard to that, Joseph switches hands so many times. Is I'm wondering if that might be a parallel between how Yeshua was passed off between the high priests and Caiaphas and the Romans, Pilate, and how he got bounced back and forth from different people. I was wondering if that might be a parallel, or if there's any other parallels that you guys could think of.
Well, sorry about the previous question from Jake. I found it in the chapter 34 of Jubilees, and it's talking about the Ishmaelites. So he was sold to the Ishmaelites, and the book of Yeshev, Rob, you're right on this, is that basically there's more details about this four group of people that it is mentioned. Actually, in the scripture, I think it's mentioned in the chapter 37 of Genesis. Is mentioning about the Midianites. So this is connecting what is written in the book of Yeshev, that they sold it first to the Midianites, if I remember well, or to the Ishmaelites, and then they sold to the Midianites, and the Midianites sold it to somebody else, even before Potiphar. So it was if I counted properly, it was around four group of people that he was sold out.
Yeah, Jake.
Well, one thing that's interesting.
We lost Jake.
Yeah, Jake bounced again. He says his computer keeps crashing. He says, "I don't think I'll be able to continue today. Need to bring the computer in." I'm like, bummer, because I'm sure he had plenty more to share.
Oh yeah.
But we still got another hour. I'm sure you guys got plenty to share too. So, Kevin, you started to say something.
Yeah. Yes. So the thing that's interesting is the land of Midian, I believe, is where the original Mount Sinai is, right? And Paul, because it's the land of Midian, and that's where Moses went, when he was raising his few sheep, right, for 40 years. And then we see also that Paul in Acts, I believe it's 7:22, refers to the land of Midian, at Mount Sinai in Arabia. And so the Saudi Arabians these days refer to themselves as the sons of Ishmael, but yet they're in the land of Midian. And so there's a tremendous crossover, and they have a lot in common. And so I find that interesting. But one of the things on the dream that was a recent observation that came to me, and you guys probably have this, but the dream, related to the fact that there were 7 fat sheaves of grain, and then they were swallowed up by the 7 skinny ones. And then they had the 7 fat, sleek cows, and then they were consumed by the 7 gaunt ones. Well, what's really interesting is the first dream involved grain, which is like the Feast of Unleavened Bread. And then the second dream involved cattle, which are there's 70 bulls sacrificed during Sukkot. So it seemed to me that this was, again, another fingerprint of our Heavenly Father, basically saying he's got a plan from the end to the beginning, represented in multiple ways. And I thought it was very interesting to make the association with the Feast of Unleavened Bread and Sukkot with this dream, and especially because it was in that exact order.
Yeah, cool. I was looking up. I can read the Joshua portion if you guys want. That seems to go into a lot of detail.
Yeah.
Let me switch.
I found that it's in the chapter 44, all right?
I got it on 42.
Okay.
I'll go ahead and read it. And they went and sat on the opposite side about a distance of a bow shot, and they sat there to eat bread. And whilst they were eating, they held counsel together that what was to be done with him, whether to slay him or to bring him back to his father. They were holding the counsel when they lifted up their eyes and saw, and behold, there was a company of Ishmaelites coming at a distance by the road of Gilead, going down to Egypt. And Judah said unto them, What will it be to us if we slay our brother? Peradventure God will require him from us. This then is the counsel proposed concerning him, which ye shall do to him. Behold, this company of Ishmaelites going down to Egypt. Now therefore come, let us dispose of him to them, and let not our hand be upon him, and they will lead him along with them, and he will be lost amongst the people of the land, and he will not put him to death with, and we will not put him to death with our own hands. And the proposal pleased his brothers, and they did according to the word of Judah. And whilst they were discoursing about this matter, and before the company of Ishmaelites had come to them, 7 trading men of Midian passed by them, and as they passed they were thirsty, and they lifted up their eyes and saw the pit in which Joseph was immured, and they looked, and behold, every species of bird was upon him. And these Midianites ran to the pit to drink water, for they thought that it contained water, and on coming before the pit they heard the voice of Joseph crying and weeping in the pit, and they looked down into the pit, and they saw, and behold, there was a youth of comely appearance and well favored. And they called unto him and said, Who art thou, and who brought thee hither, and who placed thee in this pit in the wilderness? And they all assisted to raise up Joseph, and they drew him out, and brought him up from the pit, and took him, and went away on their journey, and passed by his brethren. And these said unto them, Why do you do this, to take our servant from us to go away? Surely he placed this youth in the pit because he rebelled against us, and you come and bring him up and led him away? Now then give us back our servant. And the Midianites answered and said unto the sons of Jacob, Is this your servant, or does this man attend you? Peradventure you are all his servants, for he is more comely and well favored than any of you, and why do you all speak falsely unto us? Now therefore we will not listen to your words, nor attend to you, for we found the youth in the pit in the wilderness, and we took him, and we will therefore go on. And all the sons of Jacob approached them, and rose up to them, and said unto them, Give us back our servant, and why will you all die by the edge of the sword? And the Midianites cried against them, and they drew their swords, and approached to fight with the sons of Jacob. And behold, Simeon rose up from his seat against them, and sprang upon the ground, and drew his sword, and approached the Midianites, and he gave a terrible shout before them, so that this shout was heard at a distance, and the earth shook at Simeon's shouting. And the Midianites were terrified on account of Simeon and the noise of his shouting, and they fell upon their faces and were excessively alarmed. And Simeon said unto them, Verily I am Simeon, the son of Jacob the Hebrew, who have only with my brother destroyed the city of Shechem and the cities of the Amorites. So shall God moreover do unto me, that if all your brethren, the people of Midian, and also the kings of Canaan, were to come with you, they could not fight against me. Now therefore give us back the youth whom you have taken, lest I give your flesh to the birds of the skies and the beasts of the earth. And the Midianites were more afraid of Simeon, and they approached the sons of Jacob with terror and fright, and with pathetic words, saying, Surely you have said that the young man is your servant, and that he rebelled against you, and therefore you placed him in the pit. What then will you do with a servant who rebels against his master? Now therefore sell him unto us, and we will give you all that you require for him. And the Lord was pleased to do this, in order that the sons of Jacob should not slay their brother. And the Midianites saw that Joseph was of a comely appearance and well favored. They desired him in their hearts, and they were urgent to purchase him from his brethren. And the sons of Jacob hearkened to the Midianites, and they sold their brother Joseph to them for what? 30 pieces of silver. And Reuben, their brother, was not with them, and the Midianites took Joseph and continued their journey to Gilead. They were going along the road, and the Midianites repented of what they had done in having purchased the young man. And one said to the other, What is this thing that we have done in taking this youth from the Hebrews, who is of comely appearance and well favored? Perhaps this youth is stolen from the land of the Hebrews, and why then have we done this thing? And if he should be sought for and found in our hands, we shall die through him. Now surely hardy and powerful men have sold him to us, the strength of one of whom you saw this day. Perhaps they stole him from his land with their might and with their powerful arm, and have therefore sold him to us for the small value which we gave unto them. And whilst they were thus discoursing together, they looked, and behold, a company of Ishmaelites, which was coming at first, and which the sons of Jacob saw, was advancing toward the Midianites. And the Midianites said to each other, Come, let us sell this youth to the company of Ishmaelites, who are coming towards us, and we will take for him a little that we gave for him, and we will be delivered from this evil. And they did so, and they reached the Ishmaelites, and the Midianites sold Joseph to the Ishmaelites for 20 pieces of silver. So he's reduced in price, which they had given for him to his brethren. And the Midianites went out on the road to Gilead, and the Ishmaelites took Joseph, and they let him ride upon one of the camels, and they were leading him to Egypt. And Joseph heard that the Ishmaelites were proceeding to Egypt, and Joseph lamented and wept at this thing, that he was to be so far removed from the land of Canaan from his father. And he wept bitterly whilst he was riding upon the camel. And one of their men observed him, and made him go down from the camel and walk on foot. And notwithstanding this, Joseph continued to cry and weep, and he said, O my father, my father. And one of the Ishmaelites rose up and smote Joseph upon the cheek, and he continued to weep. And Joseph was fatigued in the road, and was unable to proceed on account of the bitterness of his soul. And they all smote him and afflicted him on the road, and they terrified him in order that he might cease from weeping. And the Lord saw the ambition of Joseph and his trouble. And the Lord brought down upon those men darkness and confusion, and the hand of every one that smote him became withered. And they said to each other, What is this thing that God has done to us in the road? And they knew not that this befell them on account of Joseph. And the men proceeded on the road, and they passed along the road of Ephrath, where Rachel was buried. And Joseph reached his mother's grave. And Joseph hastened and ran to his mother's grave, and fell upon the grave and wept. And Joseph cried aloud upon his mother's grave, and he said, O my mother, O thou who didst give me birth, awake now, and rise and see thy son, how he has been sold for a slave, and no one to pity him. O rise and see thy son, weep with me on account of my troubles, and see the heart of my brethren. Arouse, my mother, arouse, awake from thy sleep for me, and direct my battles against my brethren. Oh, how have they stripped me of my coat, and sold me already twice for a slave, and separated me from my father, and there is no one to pity me. Arouse and lay thy cause against them before God, and see whom God will justify in the judgment, and whom he will condemn. Rise, O my mother, rise, awake from thy sleep, and see my father, how his soul is with me this day, and comfort him, and ease his heart. And Joseph continued to speak these words, and Joseph cried aloud and wept bitterly upon his mother's grave. And he ceased speaking, and from bitterness of heart he became still as a stone upon the grave. And Joseph heard a voice speaking to him from beneath the ground, which answered him with bitterness of heart, and with a voice of weeping, and praying in these words, my son Joseph, I have heard the voice of thy weeping, and the voice of thy lamentation. I have seen thy tears. I know thy troubles, my son, and it grieves me for thy sake, and abundant grief is added to my grief. Now therefore, my son Joseph, my son, hope to the Lord, and wait for him, and do not fear, for the Lord is with thee. He will deliver thee from all trouble. Rise, my son, go down unto Egypt with thy masters, and do not fear, for the Lord is with thee, my son. And she continued to speak like unto these words unto Joseph, and she was still. And Joseph heard this, and wondered greatly at this, and he continued to weep. And after this, one of the Ishmaelites observed him crying and weeping upon the grave, and his anger was kindled against him, and he drove him from there, and he smote him and cursed him. And Joseph said unto the men, May I find grace in your sight, to take me back to my father's house, and he will give you abundance of riches. And they answered him, saying, Art thou not a slave? And where is thy father? And if thou hast a father, thou wouldst not already twice have been sold for a slave for so little value. And their anger was still aroused against him. And they continued to smite him and to chastise him. And Joseph wept bitterly. And the Lord saw Joseph's affliction. And the Lord again smote these men and chastised them. And the Lord caused darkness to envelop them upon the earth. And the lightning flashed, and the thunder roared, and the earth shook, and the voice of the thunder and the mighty wind. And the men were terrified, and knew not where they should go. And the beasts and the camels stood still, and they led them, but they would not go. They smote them, and they crouched upon the ground. And the men said to each other, What is this that God has done? What are our transgressions, and what are our sins, that this thing has thus befallen us? And one of them answered and said unto them, Perhaps on account of the sin of afflicting this slave has this thing happened this day to us. Now therefore implore him strongly to forgive us, and then we shall know on whose account this evil befell us. And if God shall have compassion over us, then we shall know that all this cometh to us on account of the sin of afflicting this slave. And the men did so, and they supplicated Joseph, and pressed him to forgive them. And they said, We have sinned to the Lord and to thee. Now therefore vouchsafe to request of thy God that he shall put away this death from amongst us, for we have sinned to him. And Joseph did according to the words, and the Lord hearkened to Joseph, and the Lord put away the plague which had afflicted upon those men on account of Joseph. And the beasts rose up from the ground, and they conducted them. And they went on, and the raging storm abated, and the earth became tranquilized. And the men proceeded on their journey to go down to Egypt. And the men knew that this evil had befallen them on account of Joseph. And they said to each other, Behold, we know that was on account of his affliction that this evil befell us. Now therefore, why shall we bring this death upon our souls? Let us hold counsel what to do with this slave. And one answered and said, Surely he told us to bring him back to his father. Now therefore come, let us take him back, and we will go to the place that he will tell us, and take from his family the price that we gave for him, and will then go away. And one answered again and said, Behold, this counsel is very good, but we cannot do so, for the way is very far from us, and we cannot go out of our road. And one answered and said unto them, This is the counsel to be adopted. We will not swerve from it. Behold, we are this day going to Egypt. When we shall come to Egypt, we will sell him there at a high price, and we will be delivered from this evil. And this thing pleased the men, and they did so, and they continued their journey to Egypt with Joseph. So this is one of those many cases where I love the book of Joshua, where it gives like tremendous amount of detail for just a few sentences that we get in Genesis. So a lot of interesting things transpiring there. The issue of him talking with his mother, some may think that's necromancy, and one of the thoughts that occurred to me on that, I was thinking, well, that's a bit odd, but at that time the dead went down to Hades, which divided up into the place called Abraham's bosom, and the place of torment where the rich man was, and then below that was Tartarus. So, was he imagining it? Was he hearing what he wanted to hear? Was the Lord conveying a message from her in Abraham's bosom to him? I don't know. It just says that he heard that voice. So that was the thought that occurred to me there. But interesting to see how he changes hands and for what price and whatnot. So just curious to see what you guys thought on that whole issue.
Aaron, you want to go first?
You can go first, Juan Carlos.
Okay. Actually, I wanted to add Rob in the book of Yeshev in the chapter 44. You can put it in the screen. There's a third situation going on.
44.
And it says, 44, yes.
Okay, let me pull
When
up.
the Ishmaelites arrived to Egypt,
Okay, well,
it says
all right, I'm on chapter 44.
just to look in the verse 1 and 2.
Okay, 44, 1 and 2. And the sons of Ishmael who had bought Joseph from the Midianites, who had bought him from his brethren, went to Egypt with Joseph, and they came upon the borders of Egypt. And when they came near unto Egypt, they met 4 men of the sons of Medan, the son of Abraham, who had gone forth from the land of Egypt on their journey. And the Ishmaelites said unto them, Do you desire to purchase a slave from us? And they said, Deliver him over to us. And they delivered Joseph over to them, and they beheld him, and he was very comely youth, and they purchased him for 20 shekels. And the Ishmaelites continued their journey to Egypt, and the Midianite and Midianim also returned that day to Egypt. And the Midianim said to each other, Behold, we have heard that Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh, captain of the guard, seeketh a good servant, who shall stand before him to attend him, and to make him observer over his house and all belonging to him. Now therefore come, let us sell him to him, that for what we may desire, if he be able to give unto us that which we shall require of him. Okay, so that's the rest of the story, how he ends up in Potiphar's house.
That's the second part. Yeah, and he sent up to Potiphar, and they sold according to Yeshev in 400 shekels. So, he went through different hands. First his brothers, then the Midianites, then the Ishmaelites, then the Midianites, and then Potiphar. So no, as I was sharing at the beginning, the situation for Joseph was terrible. And how it's written in details in the book of Yeshev is so amazing, because it's bringing up another topic that we have been discussing the last 2 weeks. It's again this pattern coming from the north to the land of Israel. In this case, Joseph went through Shechem, and his brothers were not there. It was even further, in a farther place. It's in the land of Dothan. And from there, it came back to the land of the promised land, and then to Mizraim. So it's again the same pattern, coming from the house of the father, mostly in Aram and Arayim, going through the promised land, and in this case going through Egypt. Now this is an amazing parable portion of, I don't know, I don't have more comments here in this part.
Yeah, I stopped early on that chapter 40. Was it 44? But you said, 400 pieces of silver. Wow, that's crazy. So he went from. So I wonder if the pieces of silver are the same as the shekels. If it's the same thing, because he went from 30 shekels or 30? No, it was 30 pieces of silver, and then it was 20. Was it 20 shekels or 20 pieces of silver? I don't remember. But I'm wondering if these numbers have value. Certainly, the 30 pieces of silver obviously is a direct parallel to Yeshua. Yeah. But it's interesting. It goes from 30 to 20, then to 400. Talk about a markup. He went from a Black Friday. He went from a Black Friday discount sale to a overpriced 400 pieces of silver.
Oh no! It seems like he was worth every shekel.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Actually, if you continue reading till later, the chapter 44. Potiphar was amazed with this boy, because he was a boy, 17 years old.
Yeah, 17.
Because he looked not like a slave, so that's why he was willing to pay the price. So it's interesting. You know what for me, just to continue with the same story, what to me caught my attention is what is written in the book of Jubilees. Because it is written in Genesis, Bereshit chapter 37, that in the verse 31, it says that so they took Joseph's robe, slew a male goat, and dipped the robe in the blood, and sent the long robe and brought it to their father and said, "We have found this. Please look. Is it the robe of your son or not?" So we see that they sacrifice a male goat. And they send the robe with this blood to Jacob. What is written in the book of Jubilees is I found it really amazing, because we see exactly the same story, the same pattern. But what is written that when they sent this robe back to Jacob, it was in the 7th month, in the 10th day of the 7th month, exactly on Yom HaKippurim. So it is written in this chapter in the book of Jubilees that one of the reasons that Yom HaKippurim was written in the tablet of heaven, it's written like this in the book of Jubilees, is because of what happened. Because in that moment they received the news. Jacob received the news of Joseph being devoured by a beast and received this robe dipped in blood. And actually, I have it here in front of me. It says the following in the book of Jubilees, chapter 34, verse 18. For this reason, it is ordained for the children of Israel that they should afflict themselves on the 10th of the 7th month, on the day that the news which made him weep for Joseph came to Jacob his father, that on it they should make atonement for themselves with a young goat on the 10th of the 7th month, once a year for their sins, for they had grieved the affection of their father regarding Joseph his son. So we see and we know that in Yom HaKippurim we have the two goats, and we know what's the process and to be done with these two goats. Exactly in this portion that they slew a male goat in order to put the blood and to deceive his father in this case. And the amazing connection here with the book of Jubilees related to Yom HaKippurim. And one additional thing that is really interesting here in the book of Jubilees, and for me it was a part of the discussion we have here at home in the morning. It's a kind of a speculation, but I think it's a good speculation in this case. It is written in the same chapter 34, is that in the verse 15 it says the following. And on that day, what day is when Jacob received the news of Joseph being devoured by the beast and the robe dipped in blood. It says, on that day, Bilhah heard that Joseph had perished, and she died mourning him. And she was living in Kaphrateth. And Dinah, his daughter, also died after Joseph had perished. And there came these 3 mournings upon Israel in 1 month. So we see in the account of the book of Jubilees that Bilhah and Dinah also died in the same month. So can you imagine the kind of grief for Jacob in that month, during that period of time? And what's the speculation that I was talking about? If we see in the chapter 37 of Genesis, when Joseph was having the dreams about the 2 dreams, and actually he was relating the second dream, in the verse 10, it says the following of the chapter 37. And he related it to his father and his brothers, and his father rebuked him and said to him, what is this dream that you have dreamed? Shall we, your mother and I and your brothers, indeed come to bow down to the earth before you? What's the interesting part? Because in the answer of Jacob, we see that he was referring, you're telling me that me, your father, and also your mother are going to bow down to you? And what's the important point? Let's keep in mind that Joseph's mother already died, was Rachel. So what was the mother that Jacob was related to or talking about here? Most probably, and that was a speculation, that was Bilhah. Bilhah was the servant of Rachel. So if we connect this to what is written in the book of Jubilees, that Bilhah, when he heard about the news of Joseph, the grief was so much that she also died. So it could be, and again, it's as a speculation, it could be that maybe Bilhah took the position of Joseph's mother as soon as Rachel died. And then that's why it's somehow to understand the connection on the book of Jubilees.
Interesting. Jubilees is the book of the 3, Enoch, Joshua, and Jubilees. Jubilees is probably the one that I have studied the least, but I'm becoming more and more intrigued by it. I think it was this past Wednesday. I think it was the last show I did on the Quest for Truth show with Zen. It was giving us because we just see here that according to Jubilees that the origin of the Day of Atonement was related to this event right here with Joseph, And what we just looked at this past Wednesday was the Sukkot. The celebration of Sukkot was Abraham's celebration at the birth of Isaac. That after Isaac was finally born and the promise finally came, and he had a 7-day, like, week-long celebration, over the birth of Isaac, and I think it was on the 8th day that he was circumcised, and that him being the first of the promise to be circumcised from birth. Everybody else, they got circumcised, as adults or whatever. So he was the first of the promise to be circumcised, 8 days after his birth. So I've just found that really fascinating and interesting, like the origin of some of these feasts. And Jubilee seems to give us quite a bit of details there. So I appreciate you sharing that. That's pretty cool.
And actually, guys, if we think on this in a bigger scale, and we see this in the book of Jubilees, that Yom HaKippurim is connected to what happened to Joseph and to what happened to Jacob. Who are the descendants of Joseph? It's Ephraim and Manasseh.
Right.
And we know that through Ephraim is going to be the fullness of the nations of the Gentiles. So what could be, or could it be that maybe in a bigger scale, that Yom HaKippurim is connected to the lost tribe of Israel, and somehow is connected to the cleansing of the house of Israel needed in order to come back to the promised land? I don't know, just thinking out of the box, thinking a bigger scale. If we have this connection, but maybe there is something more profound about Yom HaKippurim and the house of Israel, the 10 lost tribes.
Well, I can chime in on that. I think that's an amazing insight, and I think that we see another iteration of that with respect to how Joseph, what he did when he was in slavery in Potiphar's house. Potiphar basically got lazy. He got fat and lazy, basically, because in Genesis 39, it says that from that time he had made him overseer of his house. Potiphar made Joseph overseer of his house for Joseph's sake, and the blessing of Yah was on all that he had in his house in the field, and thus he had all that he had was in Joseph's hand, and he didn't know what except for the bread that he ate. So the only thing Potiphar was concerned about was eating food, or if you want to use the metaphor, just having money or accumulating stuff. And it says, but Joseph was handsome in form and appearance. So again, we see the fact that Potiphar is taking advantage of the blessing that Joseph is bringing. Okay, just like Esau was blessed by what Jacob did when he was getting cleaned up. But then it came to pass. Now Joseph is still in captivity, right? Essentially, he's in Potiphar's house. He says that after these things, his master's wife, casting longing eyes on Joseph, she said, lie with me. But he refused and said to his master's wife, look, my master doesn't know what it is with me in the house, and he has committed all that he has to my hand. There's no one greater in this house than I am, and nor has he kept anything back from me but you, because you're his wife. How could I do such a great wickedness and sin against Elohim? And then, so what we see, I'm seeing her as a picture of the harlot of Babylon, or the harlot with Babylon, right? And it was said she spoke to Joseph day after day after day, lie with me, right? And he says, no, I can't do this. And so bottom line is, when it came to it, she set up Joseph. He was alone in the house. And then she basically grabs a hold of him and demands to be serviced, right? And he essentially jumps out the window, and she hangs onto his coat, and then he's falsely accused, right? But his determination to be faithful, even when he's being tracked down by this quote unquote harlot, if you will, is remarkable, because I'm sure she was quite a beautiful woman. Potiphar, he was a man of means, and so I'm sure she was very well taken care of. But the thing is Joseph would not do it. And it reminds me of this passage in 1 Corinthians 10:13, that no temptation has overtaken you except that is common to man. Now, pretty much most men, if you have a beautiful woman attack you, are going to have a very hard time saying, how could I do such a terrible thing, and run away when they have their chance, right? He says, but Elohim is faithful, who will not allow you to be tempted beyond what you are able. So he's basically saying, if you are tempted, understand, think of it as a test. And all the other men have gone through these kind of temptations, right? But with the temptation, he will also make a way of escape that you may be able to bear it. And so the challenge for us is when this harlot of Babylon in the future appears with the mark of the beast or with whatever benefits that could be attained, it's either suffer in the wilderness with the people of the Lord until he returns, or basically go to bed with the woman that will ultimately bring you your death. But the thing is the Lord says he provides a way out of the temptation. So the challenge to us is we have to be willing to go through the escape hatch that our Heavenly Father gave us. We can't play around with this temptation. It says that we're supposed to flee from temptation. We resist the devil, submit to the Lord, resist the devil, and he will flee. But our job is to flee from temptation. And so to me, Joseph in that regard gives us a practical, personal life lesson that we should be willing to take the escape hatch and get out of there, even if it costs us being thrown in the prison. Or what does it mean how would the harlot be operating while we're in captivity before we're ready to come home and be reunited with our whole family in the land of Israel? So I think that was a very interesting association that you had there, Juan Carlos. I appreciate that. I've never thought of it that way.
No. What you shared, Kevin, also is very interesting, because while you were sharing, I was thinking that even in the life of Joseph, we see somehow what happened with the lost tribe of Israel, connecting to what I said before. He was taken from the promised land, and he was dispersed to a foreign land. He went to Mizraim. And we know what Mizraim and Pharaoh means in prophecy. It's exactly, it's like the Ephraim, the house of Israel, yes, going to a different place, having been in the middle of the nations, having all these temptations with this strange woman, but with the biggest difference is just Joseph stood firm in the way of Yahuwah, putting all the trust in him. Most probably, as you also shared at the beginning, Kevin, he needed to go through a period of cleansing as well. And last week I was sharing with Rob about this amazing book, at least that helped me a lot, is The Bait of Satan, because it's talking about what's the bait of Satan is the offense. That's the bait of Satan, and we need to be careful not to get into the bait, not to get on the fence because of the difficulties we went through during our life. And actually, that book, if I remember well, is taking exactly the same story about Joseph in order to make the case about the topic of the book. And this is really amazing, that part of the book, if I remember properly. So most probably, all this, he was sold out 4 times, fifth time to Potiphar. He went through prison. It's written in the book of Jubilees that he stood in prison for 2 years. It was 2 years, according to the book of Jubilees, in prison after all this situation with the wife of Potiphar. So can you imagine all the difficulties he went through, that most probably he needed to be clean of this big offense internally within him in order to be prepared for the dreams he had at the very beginning, in order to be a ruler, in order to receive this kingship. And it's exactly, is the process we are now. Connecting to what you said, Kevin, we are in the dispersion. We are within the nations, like being in Egypt, and we are in the process to be cleansed. And we need to do our effort every day in order to receive this cleansing and to be purified by Yahuwah. Because in the same way that Joseph, when he was prepared, even being in the dungeon, being in prison, he was lifted up by Yahuwah, and he received all this amazing promise, and he was basically the ruler of Egypt back then. It's exactly the same promise we have, that we are going to be kings and priests. But we need to do the effort. We need to cleanse ourselves during this period of time. We need to prepare ourselves for the moment that it's my belief coming very soon.
That's good. And the only other thing I'll add to what you just said is like an amen to that, is if we want to observe Joseph's disposition and behavior when he's in prison, he's got all the problems in the world. He's been sold as a slave. He's away from his family. He was a young guy. He was falsely accused, thrown in prison. He doesn't know what's going to happen to him. But yet, when you see the and we'll talk more about this next week with the wine steward and the baker, Joseph is in the prison, and with all the problems he has, and he looks at those guys and say, "Hey, what's wrong with you guys? Why is your face so long?" He's not even complaining. He's ministering to other prisoners. And I'm like, man, if that was me, I'll be like, I don't know what's wrong with y'all. Y'all did something wrong with the king. I got thrown here for no reason at all. An escape route or something? How can I get myself out of here and get home? It was, but his whole attitude always was ministering and serving and being more concerned about the disposition of others than himself. And I got to tell you, he presents a pretty challenging case for me to show how many ways I don't measure up. But that's what I think is so good about the details that the scriptures provide in these accounts, is it really lets us evaluate, hey, Kev, what would you do if you were in prison? What would you do if you were in Potiphar's house and his beautiful wife came on to you multiple times day after day? What would you do with respect to your brothers when they sold you into slavery? I got to tell you, and he was young. And when you're young, you got hormones especially, So I'm just, it's amazing to me, the faithfulness that this young man had. And it's exemplary. And I think but by the time he gets out of this prison, he is really ready to serve and be a good steward because he knows what it means to suffer. And the Lord tested him in it all. But when he was faithful and he came through that without disgracing the name of the Lord and all that, he was able to be a pretty powerful ruler, and he ruled well and righteously. And so that should be the challenge to us, is are we in a situation where we could be given positions of higher management or bigger kingdom assignments or being trusted with a lot of resources, be it financial or logistical or whatever, will we be good stewards? And if he could trust us with the little stuff like he did with Joseph when he was in prison and at Potiphar's house, well, then maybe he could put him in charge of something really big like the whole country of Egypt. And I have this little kind of a fun twist on how to say, for God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten son, that whoever believes in him will have everlasting life and not perish, right? From John 3:16. But I can also put it in the case of Joseph and say, for God so loved the world that he gave Joseph the dreams and the plan that all who would listen to him and follow that plan would not perish, but they would live. And this is, again, the way that the Lord saved the world through his faithful servants. And so we should have that kind of attitude to be a faithful servant. Who knows, maybe the Lord could use us in a powerful way that goes far beyond our own immediate family or our own immediate situation, that is really about his kingdom and, frankly, the lost world that needs him so badly. And so I think there's a lot to be learned from the lessons of the life of Joseph.
Yeah, absolutely.
Very good, okay.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I mentioned at the beginning of the broadcast, one of the things that really got me super excited, I mean, it was like, wow, I'm chomping on a steak dinner here finally, was I, like many people probably, especially growing up as, quote unquote, New Testament Bible believing Christians, we've read some of the stories of the Old Testament before, right? But we don't spend a lot of time really, we might read about Abraham a little bit or Noah's Ark or, Adam and Eve or whatever, but we don't like really dive in, at least not like what we have been doing here at the Virtual House Church and what I did at that first meeting that you brought me to when Michael, who was facilitating that meeting, said, okay, I want you guys to draw a line. I'm going to tell you guys in the audience to do the same thing. If you've never done this, you need to do it. It's a cool thing to do. Get a pen and paper out and draw a cross on your piece of paper, a vertical line and a horizontal line at the top. And at the top, put Joseph on the left and Yeshua or Jesus on the right. And then in the columns below that, below the horizontal line, write all the parallels that you can come up with off the top of your head. Just think of, the life of Joseph, what we know about the life of Joseph, and what we know about the life of Yeshua, and how many parallels can you come up with. And, if you want to cheat a little bit, and I would encourage you not to do it yourself, but If you go to the Virtual House Church study page for this week's study, I give you my list here. Is on the way down the bottom here, and I'm not going to read through these right now, but that was what I wrote down on my piece of paper, and I forget how many there were there, maybe 20 or so, whatever it was. That was what came off the top of my head. But everybody in the room, I don't remember how many people were there for that meeting, Kevin. Maybe you might remember, maybe 20 or 30 people probably.
Yeah.
After we all, he gave us a few minutes to do that. Everybody individually wrote their notes out. And then we began to share, going around the room. Now, most of us had a lot of the same ones, but some had others that I didn't have, and I might have had some that they didn't have, whatever. So when I added together everything that was coming out of that discussion to what I had written, man, there had to have been something like 50 parallels. I mean, it was like crazy. Wow. And I just saw one just now that I wasn't paying attention to back then. I don't think it's in the list that I put there. I could be wrong, but was that when Jacob saw the coat that had been shredded, he thought, surely my son has been torn to pieces. And I thought, wow, Yeshua was torn to pieces. Mm-hmm. I mean, yes, we have the crucifixion, but before that, watch the Passion of the Christ. It does a fairly good job, I think, of coming close to how horrific it was just in the scourging that he went to before he even went to the cross. That he was torn to pieces, literally. I mean, when you really look at the parallels, it is astounding how many parallels. And to understand that the Jews historically have had this vision of Messiah, that they had like two characters. They had Messiah ben Joseph, that they identified as the suffering servant, and Messiah ben David, that was the conquering king. And when he came the first time, then they were under the bondage of the Romans. The disciples and everybody were like, hey, they're hoping for Messiah ben Judah or Messiah ben David, the conquering king to come and wipe out everybody. But that's not how he came the first time. I think the scholars have how is this same person going to be this amazing king and yet be this suffering servant at the same time? Well, as Christians, we understand, because he's coming twice. He came the first time as Messiah ben Joseph, the suffering servant. He's coming the second time as Messiah ben David, the conquering king. And when we go to the book of Revelation, I forget how many times he's referred to as the Lamb. He's predominantly referred to as the Lamb until he takes on the mantle of the lion. And so even to this day, right now, he's still in the capacity of the Lamb. He's serving as the Lamb, but he's going to come back as the lion. So... but this is the first Torah portion, and in this week's Torah portion also was the question was Tamar a Canaanite? And I was just on sort of in the middle of my Nephilim research at that time, and all the stuff that I've been looking into in the Canaanites, and Pastor Michael asked the question, was Tamar a Canaanite? And about half the class thought she was. And I was like, no way, there's no way Tamar's a Canaanite. And the text doesn't tell you in Genesis. But this was sort of I was aware of Joshua and I'd looked into it a little bit before, but this was the first time that I really dove into Joshua. Because after that class, we were bantering back and forth. Was she Canaanite? Yeah, no. I was like, I got to figure this out. Somebody has to say something somewhere. And when I dove into the scriptures first, didn't find anything, then looked in Joshua and saw that Tamar was in fact of the house of Shem. And I was like, cool! That solved the problem for me. And then I couldn't wait to get back to class the next week to have the discussion. But those are just some of the things that I got out of this week's portion. I wanted to ask you guys what your thoughts were on the parallels between Joseph and Yeshua.
It's just amazing, Edro, just to start over. I was getting some of them, what I saw in the chapter 37 at the beginning of today. It makes us wonder into this relationship between the Mashiach and Joseph. And that I have been wondering all this, a long time, and maybe you can have insight on this, because the parallel between Joseph and Mashiach is so big that it's like talking the same stories. It's exactly the same things that happen and so on. But what I have been wondering is that why Mashiach didn't come through the seed of Joseph. He came through the seed of Yehuda. So what happened in the story that somehow this kinship went through Joseph to Yehuda? Because that the parallel is so amazing that it looks like Mashiach should come from Joseph, but it's not. It's coming from the tribe of Judah. So I don't know. Maybe guys, you have some insights on this topic.
I can offer one little insight on that, and it comes back to Ezekiel when he gives the prophecy of the dry bones. The Hebrew word for a bone is etzem, and then you have the immediately following the dry bones, you have the two sticks, which the Hebrew word is etz, right? The etzem has the mem sofit, and the etz does not. But what you see is you have two sticks. There's one that's to Joseph in the hand or the power of Ephraim and his chavero, or his loyal associates. And then there's the other stick. It's Yehuda by chavero. It's for Judah, or to or toward Judah and his loyal companions. And so the two sticks I see, Joseph is like the suffering servant one, and Judah is like the King David one, right? The kingly line. And so the two become one in the hand of Yeshua the Messiah, because he fulfills both. He is the lamb who suffered like Joseph, and he's the king. But he, like Joseph first had to be tested. He passed the test with Potiphar's. He passed the wife. He passed the test with going to prison. And then when he came up out of the pit, when he arose from the dead, so to speak, and he reveals himself, he becomes the ruler of the known world at that point. And so we see that pattern as well. So when you look at the role of the Messiah, and you look at the role of anybody really in the scripture, every single patriarch went through issues and had to be tested. Jewish tradition says Abraham was tested 10 times. The Bible says he was tested once. But maybe you could say it's the ultimate test about giving up his son, Isaac. And then the angel took away the knife before he, did the sacrifice there. But the bottom line is, there's no one in the scripture that doesn't have some failure or some fault or some shortcoming. In spite of that, how the Lord used them. Moses struck the rock twice. Abraham, she's my sister. Isaac, she's my sister. Noah getting drunk and allowing Ham to do his thing. Adam hanging out with his wife. Yeah, you just go right down it. Every one of them had issues of some sort, but the Lord used them powerfully. There's one though that never had an issue, and it's Yeshua the Messiah. And you say, well, he's not the Messiah, because the Messiah comes, he brings peace, and we have no peace. That means no Messiah. And I say, I grant you that, but here's what I would tell you is, maybe the messianic age has not yet arrived, but the test has been performed. And the only human to ever walk on the face of the earth passed the ultimate test. And he gave up his life for his friends, and he rose from the dead, and he gave us a gift of his spirit. And while we're waiting on that age to come, he is already the only one ever qualified for the job. And so when that age comes, the Messiah has been selected. And so we will see that he will be the Messiah when the messianic age arrives, because no one else qualifies. Not David, Bathsheba, not Moses, struck the rock, not Aaron. Well, I made the golden calf. Go right. And I'm not making fun of these guys. You could write a terrible book about me and all of my shortcomings, and I'm not focusing on the shortcomings. I'm just saying that there was only one who was truly blameless and upright before anybody else, and that was Yeshua the Messiah.
Mm-hmm. And along that line, when you hear like Jewish people say Yeshua or Jesus is not the Messiah, we as Christians kind of we get triggered on that. But what I learned, and I learned this from Dr. Russ Houck, is and I wish he would have worded it differently in his book Epidemic, because in the beginning he comes out pretty early in the book, it's saying that Jesus is not the Messiah. And I'm like, this guy's crazy, and I threw the book across the room. And I've thrown that book. I threw that book probably a half dozen times or more, physically threw it across the room. This guy can't. And every time I threw the book, I felt like Father was saying, no, pick it up, go back, finish it, hear the whole matter before coming to a conclusion. Later in the book, he elaborates on what he says earlier, and I said, brother, you need to really, if you don't want to lose Christians, like, you almost lost me several times, bro, you need to change this. But what the bottom line is that for the Jewish people, Messiah, I mean, the word just means anointed one. But
That's right.
in their mind, it means anointed king. And we would say parenthetically, anointed conquering king, because they're looking for the Messiah to be the conquering king that delivers them from the enemies here on earth. Here on earth being the key phrase, here on earth. Now, we say Yeshua, Jesus, is the King of kings, Lord of lords. He's ruling in heaven, and he's a ruler of my heart, or he should be, right? But he is not physically ruling and reigning as a king on this earth, having defeated his enemies. And so now that I understand sort of the mindset, as this public speaker, you're trained to know your audience, right? Learn your audience. Like, where are they coming from? What is their mindset? And when you understand what their mindset is, then you can have the conversation. Like when I was ministering with Muslims, they have issues with the Jews, they have issues with the Christians, but they believe in the God of Abraham. Now, I don't believe Allah is the same as Yahuwah. But to them, what I understood as a missionary is that the word Allah is their word, their Arabic word for God. Like Yahuwah is the proper name for the God that we serve, right? But what I understood was that the name, it was not so much the proper name as it was the title for God. And rather than get into semantics with them, because why would I want to get them ticked off when I'm trying to reach them, is I'm like, okay, I want to get into their head and talk to them, and I would just ask them, do you believe in the God of Abraham? And they would say, yes, of course. Okay. Then I can have a conversation from there. We're on the same page without them really realizing exactly, what I'm talking about here, but we realize we're talking about the God of Abraham, right? And so when I'm talking with a Jewish person, I don't need to go the route of Messiah necessarily. I can say suffering servant, I can go to Isaiah 53, I can talk about all kinds of different things. But in his mind, he's thinking conquering king ruling and reigning on earth. And he hasn't yet come in that capacity. And that's what I was talking about in Revelation, is he is mentioned more often as the lamb than he is the lion. I think he's like once or twice as a lion. The rest of the time he's the lamb. So at the moment, he's, so let's go to Joseph. Right? let's look at Joseph. And in the issue of Judah, I just went back and looked at chapter 37, and let me put it up on the screen. Chapter 37, verse 26. It was Judah, like the brothers wanted to kill him. But Judah said, what profit is it if we slay our brother and conceal his blood? Like he was the one that said, nah, I don't think we should kill him. Although in the case of Jesus, Yeshua, it was Judah that said, kill him, crucify him. So I don't quite know what to make of that, but just to kind of circle back around to what your point was, Juan Carlos, we have Judah and Joseph living at this time and looking at their lives right there and seeing, okay, at what point is this where it diverges, the prophecy of the coming Messiah, the seed that would destroy the serpent? Is this where it goes to suffering servant and king? And it would appear to me that that's what happens. And it was Judah who says, no, we need to spare his life. And so, okay, we know that the Messiah is going to come through Judah. But then what does Judah do? Like next chapter, like he goes and marries a Canaanite. He's like, what, dude? Are you kidding me? In the whole issue of the Nephilim, going back to Genesis chapter 3 and then 6, was to prevent the seed from coming. This is all about a seed war. One of the reasons why I call my TV series Seed. It's all about the seed war, and so they're trying, the fallen ones are trying to destroy that seed. And we know that the Canaanites were of that seed. They were Nephilim. So Judah goes and marries a Canaanite. But Tamar was not a Canaanite. And so, as my wife says, through Operation Leverage, she's, because she's getting robbed left and right here. She gets the firstborn and he dies, and then the secondborn, and then she's promised to the thirdborn. But then Judah's like, well, I've lost 2 kids because of this woman. Maybe not. So he prevents her from marrying his youngest son because he's still young anyway. And so she's like, well, in that culture, in that society, she's essentially used goods. What hope does she have for a future if she doesn't get Judah's youngest son? And so she's like, well, and this must say something about Judah's character, because he sees a prostitute. What's his first thought? Hey, baby, I'm going to give you everything I got. So Tamar must have known something about the character of Judah in order for her to do what she did. Like, she was like, I know how to get what I want. Whereas Joseph, when he's put in that temptation, he flees. He doesn't, he's tested, but he sins not. There's just so much here so much amazing parallels here. We could spend all day probably on this Torah portion.
Hey, Rob, can I point out one quick thing from Daniel chapter 9?
Yeah.
Verses 24 and 26, or 24 through 27. And I want to make this clear, because I'm going to use the exact words that Daniel used, right? And he's talking about the prophecies of the 70 weeks, right? And he talks about that it's been determined for your people, your holy city, to finish transgression, to put an end to sin, make reconciliation for iniquity, bring in everlasting righteousness, seal up vision and prophecy, and to anoint the most holy. He dissects it and explains some key milestones that takes place in this prophecy. And in verse 25, he says, know, therefore, and understand that from the going forth of the command to restore and build Jerusalem, okay? And that, according to Ezra, was in the 20th year of Artaxerxes, I believe. And this is when the decree was made so that Ezra and Nehemiah could go back and start rebuilding it. It says from that point in time, which, by the way, extra biblical, just texts or historical texts indicate that happened in 444 BC, roughly. And it says that from that decree until the Messiah, the Prince, there shall be 7 weeks and 62 weeks. The streets will be built again in the wall, but even in troubled times. And then it says here, and this is very clear, after the 62 weeks, the Messiah will be cut off. So it tells you that the Messiah is killed. Okay? So I know that he's going to be a ruling, reigning king and all that. But before he does accomplish all of the things in the 70-week prophecies, at some midpoint, he is cut off, but not for himself. And the people of the prince who will come will destroy the city and the sanctuary. And the end will be with a flood until the end of the war and desolations are determined. So those wars and desolations, I think, relates to all of the stuff we hear about in Revelation with the seals and the trumpets and the seals, trumpets, and ultimately bowls. But it says here that he, and the whole context of this is the Messiah, he will confirm the covenant with the many for 1 7 or 1 week. Well, the Messiah is confirming his covenant, the new covenant, the one that he poured out in his blood. But in the middle of that, then he, which I believe is the false Messiah, will come and put an end to it, right? He puts an end to sacrifice and offering. On the wing of abominations, he will make it desolate. And so what the point is this, Daniel is very, very clear. He says the anointed one, the prince, the Messiah, the prince is the son of the king. He's the one that will be cut off before this era. And so what I submit to you, that Yeshua is the Messiah, according to Daniel, the prophet. Mm-hmm. And he was cut off and put to death. But when he returns, he will rule and reign, and he will put an end to all of these abominations and desolations.
What happened in 444 BC, you were saying?
That was when the decree went out, when basically Ezra got the document from the Persian rulers that says we can come back to Israel and we can rebuild our temple. And then they did it under great duress, right? And that's when you can find that in Ezra and Nehemiah. I'm sorry I don't have those references. I didn't realize we were going to talk about this, or I would have been better prepared. But that's when the extra biblical sources show that it was the 20th year of King Artaxerxes. And when you look up articles like in Wikipedia or history books, you can see when he reigned, and you add 20 to the beginning of his reign, and you find that it was 444 BC.
Wow.
And that's where you take the 490 years would be the prophecy, but you got to back off 7, so that's 483 years, and that takes you to when Yeshua would have been cut off, which would have been 30 AD.
Yeah, and that's what astounds me about people who want to reject Yeshua. I mean, there are so many things that they have to throw out if they don't believe in the New Testament, if they're only Old Testament. I'm like, you gotta and especially like the book of Enoch. I mean, Enoch, even though it's not currently in our canon, is loaded with messianic verbiage, prophecy, and things that are directly related to Yeshua. Yeah. But here's one right down to the numbers. I wasn't aware of 444 though. That's kind of cool because I had learned quite some time ago because I was seeing triple digits like crazy for years. Like everywhere I looked, I was seeing triple digits, and I became like I got to figure out what this means, And I did a study on numbers in the Bible, and that one sticks out to me because I remember 444 represented God at work in the earth through His covenant people. Is the meaning of the numbers 444, and so that's why it really jumped out at me when you just said that. Very, very cool, man.
Actually, to the issue of Tamar, I went through a similar situation like you described it in your case, Rob. I was wondering and looking for what was the origin of Tamar, and I find the same information like you. So it's amazing. Actually, you go to the Book of Jubilees. Also, the Book of Jubilees mentioned the origin of Tamar. It doesn't go to the same level of details like the Book of Yeshev, but it mentions clearly that she was a Canaanite. And that was so interesting because we see somehow that Judah, let's call it, went astray, departing from the way, taking a Canaanite woman, but Yahuwah somehow orchestrated something in order to put it back on the way and to preserve the seed, as you mentioned. And actually, in the Book of Jubilees is really interesting because when Judah realized there was Tamar, first he stopped the punishment over here, but is going into more details that Yehuda was weeping and looking for forgiveness of Yahuwah because of what he did. When he realized that he sinned in ignorance, because what he committed was sin by taking the wife of his son, but he did it in ignorance. So he was weeping, it says the Book of Jubilees, in order to look for forgiveness, and forgiveness was granted to Judah, to Yehuda. So we see again another parallel to what we were discussing before. We see somebody that is going to in the wrong direction, but Yahuwah orchestrated everything in a way that maybe we can see it with our own eyes as a mistake. But his ways are not our ways, and his thoughts are not our thoughts. It is written very clearly in the Word. So he orchestrated all of this in order to take Yehuda back on the proper way, and it was in such an interesting way that Judah himself declared that Tamar was even more righteous than himself. Mm-hmm. So, and we consider that Tamar was from the house of Shem, as written in the book of Yeshev. Tamar knew about the instructions, knew about the laws, knew about the Torah. So she knew that everything that was going through here, that the only fact that Yehuda didn't want to give the first son, he was breaking Torah, he was committing sin. So everything was orchestrated in such a way in order to clean the path. And it's so amazing that she brought forth these two sons. It's Perez and Saher, I think is the other name. I don't remember it well. But we see this even in the book of Ruth, in the chapter 4, when we see the entire story between Boaz and Ruth. Boaz trying to claim his right of the kinsman in order to take Ruth as a wife. It's written in the chapter 4, verse 12, when Boaz asked for the witness in that moment in order to witness and proclaim loudly about that they were in agreement that he had the right in order to take the kinsman position. It is written in the chapter 4, verse 12, that the people, the witnesses, says the following. And actually, let me read from the 4, 11, and 12. It says, And all the people who were at the gate and the elders said, Witnesses, Yahuwah make the woman who is coming to your house as Rachel, and as Leah, the two who built the house of Israel, and prove your worth in Ephrata and proclaim the name in Bethlehem. And let your house be like the house of Peretz, whom Tamar bore to Yehuda, of the seed which Yahuwah does give you from his young man. And why this is so important? Because if Yahuwah and didn't orchestrate this thing, and Tamar didn't deceive somehow Yehuda in order to bring him back on the way, we shouldn't have this in Ruth. And what happened? Ruth basically brought forth the Perez. Tamar, brought forth Perez, and through Perez, we have the seed of David. This is at the end of the chapter 4 of the book of Ruth, where is the genealogy of Perez, the son of Tamar and Yehuda, and through that house we see amazing things. Not only that David came through this, and also I was sharing in few weeks ago that we have a person in this genealogy. It's called Aminadab. Okay, Aminadab has a son, Nachshon. It says in the verse 20 of the book of Ruth. And Aminadab, beside Nachshon has a daughter. I don't recall where it's written. I think it's in Number or the Leviticus. The sister of Nachshon, or the daughter of Aminadab, was the wife of Aharon, the first high priest. So we see that through the house of Perez, also the lineage of the high priest came forth. Eleazar, Itamar was part of that same lineage, and also we see the lineage of the kingship through David. And just to finish my comment, we see here also that it was so orchestrated by Yahuwah that when we go to the book of Matthew in Hebrew, the book of Matthew, and we see in the chapter 1 in the entire genealogy of Yahushua HaMashiach, ben David, ben Abraham. And we see in this verse 3, it says, and Yehuda brought forth Perez and Serach by Tamar. And Perez brought forth Hezron, and Hezron brought forth Ram. And Ram brought forth Aminadab, and Aminadab brought forth Nachshon, and Nachshon brought forth Salmon. And Salmon brought forth Boaz by Rahab, and Boaz brought forth Obed by Ruth, and Obed brought forth Yishai, who was the father of David. So even with this entire story that sometimes to our eyes could see difficult to understand, we see the hand of Yahuwah orchestrating everything, because through that orchestration and through that seed, we got Mashiach, Yahushua HaMashiach. So all of this is so interesting. The parallelism between Joseph and between Mashiach. We see this story of Tamar in this portion and Yehuda, and also this is connected again to Yahushua HaMashiach. We see everywhere Yahushua being our Mashiach. The promised seed is our King, our Savior.
Amen.
That's a perfect note to end on, right at the top of the hour here. Really good stuff, guys. Thanks so much. Really enjoyed it. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Rob, and nice to see you, Kevin.
Hey, thank you so much. It's been too long.
Yeah. Kevin, do you think you'd be able to join us maybe next week?
I think so.
Oh, we're very good. Awesome. I did speak with Zach, and he said he and Darren from My House Ministries should be able to join us at the beginning of 2021. So probably in January, we may have some other people joining us here as well. So always enjoy it. It's this very good commentary here, and thank you guys so much for your input. And thank you everyone that is watching us today and that will watch us in the archive. Shabbat Shalom, everybody. Actually, before we do that, we had a little custom we started a while back of doing the Aaronic blessing, and I know you know it in Hebrew, Kevin. So Kevin, if you want to do it in Hebrew, and Juan Carlos, you want to do it in Spanish, and I'll do it in English.
Right.
What chapter is that again? Numbers. I should have this memorized.
6.
6. Should have this
6-4.
memorized. It's at the end of it.
That's just,
at the very end of 6. Okay. Yeah. So Kevin, you do it in Hebrew, Juan Carlos in Spanish, and I'll do it in English.
all right. Yivarechecha Yahweh Vayishmarecha Yair Yahweh Panav Elecha Vechuneka Yisa Yahweh Panav Elecha Ve'asem Lecha Shalom.
Awesome.
Yahuwah, Yahuwah te bendiga y te guarde. Yahuwah haga resplandecer su rostro sobre ti y tenga de ti misericordia. Yahuwah alce sobre ti su rostro y te dé paz.
The Lord bless thee and keep thee. The Lord make his face shine upon thee and be gracious unto thee. The Lord lift up his countenance upon thee and give thee peace, also known as Shalom. Shabbat Shalom, everybody.